Colonial Blacksmith by Devin, Newman, Samuel Botcho.
Importance of a colonial blacksmith. Colonial blacksmiths were essential for the colonies to survive and make money. They were used to make a whole bunch of tools for farmers like hoes, plowshares, cowbells, horseshoes, and axes. They also they were also necessary because they made things like pots and pans, which were necessary for cooking and boiling water so they could have fresh water. Without blacksmiths, life in the colonies would be even harder than it already was.
Iron. Iron was the most commonly used metal by the colony blacksmiths. Iron ore existed in large quantities in the neighborhood of Jamestown, making it easily accessible and extremely easy to use due to the fact they have so much experience in it from where they come from. Here are some pictures of unrefined iron ore, which it shows it has rust on it and impurities, and refined iron ore, which is pure iron.
Becoming a blacksmith. Becoming a skilled blacksmith was not an easy task, and becoming a blacksmith normally meant you were doing it for the rest of your life. Most blacksmiths started as indentured servants. You had to become an apprentice, which started from around 14 to 15 years old and lasted up to 7 years. You would agree to work under a master. In exchange, you got food and a place to stay, as well as experience, but you had to help out and work. At the beginning of the apprenticeship, you would start out by just watching or doing simple tasks, then moving on to some more advanced things. Eventually, the final test to become a blacksmith was to make a masterpiece that would be judged by your master to determine if you'd become a journeyman or not. While being a journeyman, and you could gather enough money, then you could open your own shop.
The blacksmith shop. The blacksmith shop is also known as a forge. This was the workplace of the blacksmith. The size and availability of within the forge varied throughout the colonies. The most common tools will be discussed on the next slide. The forge was typically extremely hot in temperature, which made the job of the blacksmith quite difficult, along with the labor of moving heavy objects such as the hammer and anvil and metal used for forging. We talked about this in a previous slide, which was the iron. Some of the most common tools used by the colonial blacksmith. One of these tools was an anvil. It was an iron block of metal that makes a smooth working surface. Now, this anvil had many features, including a horn, a shoulder, table, and so on. All of these features could be used to shape whatever the blacksmith is working on better to their liking. We will talk about what they make or made the most in the next slide. Another important tool to a blacksmith is the tongs. The tongs are used to hold extremely hot metal objects, pour liquid metal, and handle hot things in general. The sledgehammer had it varied in versions. There was some sledgehammers with hide on each side of the blunt, and others with just pure metal. And this was due to the fact that you can strike whatever you are forging softer or harder, based on the material of the sledgehammer. Now, these sledgehammers are used to clear things like blades, pots, pans, horseshoes, and nails. This is an image of nails that were made by a blacksmith during colonial times. Now, obviously, they aren't industry nails because they were made by a blacksmith. Now, a blacksmith spent most of their life making common things like nails and basic metal objects that were used quite often, like cups, pots, pans. It was very rare that a blacksmith actually got to make something that they enjoyed liking, such as blades or horseshoes or stuff like that.
Merchantry. Blacksmiths were necessary for the economic wealth and survival of many colonies. Many colonies run out of food and need to trade in order to get crops and resources. Many of these trades were done between the Native Americans, which sought after the European tools and weaponry. Many of the colonies would rely on the blacksmiths so they could trade for food and prevent starvation within their colony.
I would like to talk about the websites we used. Many of these websites are history websites that provided us with most of the pictures. However, we got most of the information from this link right here.